What if I told you that one man turned chaos into a kingdom? That from a land torn apart by war and division, he forged a nation that would last for more than 3,000 years? Egypt. A land of gods, of pharaohs, of glory and mystery. Before the pyramids, before the pharaohs, there was a forgotten king who turned chaos into a kingdom. His name Narmer. His story is where Egypt begins. From Narmer, the first king, to Cleopatra, the last queen, this is the story of a civilization that defied time itself. For centuries Egypt was not one nation. It was two. To the south, Upper Egypt, the land of the White Crown. Harsh deserts pressed against the fertile floodplains of the Nile. To the north, Lower Egypt, the land of the Red Crown. A green delta stretching to the Mediterranean, dotted with cities, harbors, and farmlands. The two lands shared a river, a lifeline but not peace. Rival chiefs fought for dominance. Battles raged for generations. No one could unite them, until Narmer appeared. Narmer was born into the royal family of Upper Egypt. From childhood he was trained to fight, to lead, to rule. But unlike others, Narmer had a vision, a united Egypt, strong and eternal. He grew up watching endless bloodshed between the two lands. Every harvest, soldiers came to take grain. Every season, borders shifted with the tide of war. Narmer knew this chaos could not last. If Egypt was to survive, it needed one ruler. But uniting two worlds was no simple task. Lower Egypt was rich, powerful, and fiercely independent. To conquer it, Narmer needed more than an army. He needed strategy and destiny. Our greatest clue to Narmer's conquest is an artifact, the Narmer palette. A slab of carved stone over 5,000 years old, discovered in the ruins of Hierakonpolis. On one side, Narmer wears the white crown of Upper Egypt. He towers above his enemies, striking them down with divine power. On the other, he wears the red crown of Lower Egypt, marching victorious, inspected by gods. Was it pure propaganda? A king's boast carved in stone? Or a record of the real moment Egypt became one? We may never know. But the message is clear. Narmer claimed to rule both lands. The war for unification reached its climax in a battle between Upper and Lower Egypt. Narmer's forces swept down the Nile with speed and fury. He crushed rival chiefs, one by one, until only the northern capital remained. The fighting was brutal, the stakes immense. Victory meant a kingdom. Defeat meant the end of his dream. When the dust settled, Narmer emerged victorious. His enemies lay defeated. And in triumph, he placed the red crown of the north upon the white crown of the south. For the first time Egypt was one. The double crown was born. And Narmer became the first pharaoh of a united Egypt. But victory was only the beginning. Uniting a land divided for centuries was not easy. Narmer founded a new capital, Memphis, strategically placed between Upper and Lower Egypt. From there he could watch over both lands, balancing their needs, preventing rebellion. Trade flourished. Farmers harvested grain from the fertile delta. Gold and minerals flowed from the deserts. Narmer's Egypt became a hub of wealth, connected to the world beyond Africa. Temples were built, rituals performed, and the idea of kingship took root. The pharaoh was not just a man. He was a god on earth. But unity was fragile. Old rivalries did not vanish overnight. In the north, rebellious factions rose against him. At the borders, foreign raiders tested his strength. Narmer fought battle after battle to hold his fragile kingdom together. And then, as suddenly as he had risen, Narmer was gone. How did Egypt's first pharaoh die? Some say he fell in battle, struck down defending his borders. Others whisper of betrayal, that he was assassinated by rivals who feared his power. The truth is lost to time, buried in the sands of Egypt. But his legacy endured. He left more than a crown. He left the idea of Egypt, a nation united, strong, eternal. An idea that would outlive him by 3,000 years. Narmer forged a kingdom. But his heirs dreamed of eternity. Soon, kings would rise who dared the impossible, to build monuments that touched the sky. Temples of stone. Tombs for gods. The pyramids. But who built the first? And why? Narmer created Egypt. But his heirs dreamed bigger. They wanted eternity. And to achieve it they turned to stone. For in the Old Kingdom, Egypt's kings began a project unlike anything the world had ever seen. A race to the heavens. A race to build the pyramids. 2 centuries after Narmer, a new pharaoh took the throne, Djoser of the 3rd dynasty. Like Narmer, he ruled as both king and god. But Djoser wanted more than power. He wanted to live forever. To secure his immortality, he turned to his genius vizier, Imhotep. Architect. Engineer. priest. A man whose name would echo for thousands of years. Imhotep designed something revolutionary. Instead of mud brick tombs he would build with stone, massive limestone blocks. And not just a simple mastaba. He stacked 6 on top of each other, rising higher and higher, until the first pyramid was born. The step pyramid of Saqqara towered over the desert, nearly 200 feet tall. For the first time humanity defied the earth and reached for the sky. It was not just a tomb. It was a stairway to eternity. Djoser's step pyramid marked the dawn of a new age. Pharaohs were no longer just rulers. They were builders of eternity. A century later, a new pharaoh emerged who would change Egypt forever, Sneferu. Unlike Djoser, Sneferu was not content with one great pyramid. He built 3. His first attempt, the Mitam Pyramid, collapsed in disaster. The structure's core failed, leaving rubble where immortality should have stood. But Sneferu was not defeated. He learned from failure. His architects redesigned the next project, the Bent Pyramid. It rose steeply, but midway through the angle was adjusted, creating a strange, bent profile. It still stands today, a monument to human error and perseverance. And finally, Sneferu succeeded. His third pyramid, the Red Pyramid, rose perfectly smooth, 341 feet tall. It was the first true pyramid in history. For the first time, the Egyptians perfected the formula that would define their age. Visual, a sweeping drone shot over the Red Pyramid glowing in sunset light. Sneferu was the father of Egypt's golden age of building. Without him, the Great Pyramid would never have been possible. Sneferu's son, Khufu, would take building to the extreme. He ordered the construction of the Great Pyramid of Giza, the largest stone monument ever created by human hands. Over 2 million limestone blocks, some weighing more than 70 tons, were hauled from quarries. Tens of thousands of workers labored for decades. With copper tools, sledges, and sheer determination they raised a mountain of stone. The Great Pyramid stood 481 feet tall, perfectly aligned with the stars of Orion's belt. For nearly 4,000 years, it was the tallest structure on Earth. Even today no one fully understands how they built it. Was it ramps? Levers? Ingenious engineering lost to time? To the Egyptians the Great Pyramid was more than a tomb. It was the sun frozen in stone. The eternal throne of a god. But Khufu's reign was not remembered fondly. Ancient accounts describe him as a harsh ruler, demanding endless labor for his pyramid. Whether truth or legend, his monument remains his legacy, the only one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world still standing. After Khufu, his son Khafre took the throne. Not to be outdone, he built his own pyramid, slightly smaller but rising from higher ground, giving the illusion it was taller than his father's. And in front of it he carved one of Egypt's greatest mysteries, the Great Sphinx. A lion's body with the face of a pharaoh, gazing eternally toward the sunrise. Was it Khafre himself? A guardian of the pyramids? Or something older? The truth remains debated, but its power endures. Khafre gave Egypt a symbol that would last forever. The Sphinx, silent, eternal, watching as empires rise and fall. Khafre's successor, Menkaure, built the third and smallest pyramid at Giza. Unlike his predecessors, Menkaure was remembered as a just and merciful king. Ancient writers said he was kind to his people, easing their burdens. His pyramid, though smaller, was elegant, faced with granite, polished to shine in the sun. A final jewel on the Giza plateau. But Menkaure's reign marked the end of Egypt's Grand Pyramid age. Resources were strained. Power grew fragile. The Old Kingdom had reached its peak, and soon it would fall. After Menkaure, Egypt's golden age began to crumble. Famine struck. The Nile failed to flood. Crops withered and starvation spread. Priests gained power, nobles rebelled, and the authority of the pharaoh weakened. The once mighty state fractured. Civil war broke out. The Old Kingdom, the age of pyramids, collapsed into darkness. Egypt had tasted greatness, but glory comes at a cost. In the chaos that followed, the land of the Nile nearly tore itself apart. But from the ashes a new order would rise. Pharaohs who would fight wars, conquer lands, and bring Egypt back from the brink. This was the Middle Kingdom. The Old Kingdom had fallen. The Nile no longer brought life, but hunger. Famine struck. Nobles rose against kings. Egypt, once united under Narmer's crown, shattered into rival lords. For more than a century the land of the Nile was plunged into chaos. This was the first intermediate period. But from the darkness, a savior would rise. The end of the Old Kingdom came not from war but from the sky. For reasons still debated, the Nile failed to flood for years. Without its waters, Egypt's crops withered. Hunger spread like fire. The power of the pharaoh crumbled. Local governors, once loyal to the throne, declared themselves rulers. Egypt fractured into dozens of small states, each fighting for control. Temples fell silent. Tombs were robbed. Even the pyramids were broken into, their treasures stolen. For the first time in centuries, Egypt was not one kingdom but many. It seemed the dream of Narmer had died. But the Nile has a way of healing. And from the city of Thebes, a warrior king would rise to reunite the land. Around 2050 BCE, a new ruler from Thebes, Mentuhotep II, claimed the throne. But Egypt was divided. The north, ruled from Heracleopolis, resisted his authority. For years, war raged between north and south. Finally, Mentuhotep's armies crushed the rebels. Egypt was one again. He declared himself not just king but son of Ra. With divine backing, he rebuilt temples, restored order, and brought peace. His reign marked the beginning of the Middle Kingdom, an age of revival, strength, and culture. Mentuhotep II gave Egypt back its soul. But the new kingdom he founded would not just survive, it would conquer. After Mentuhotep came Amenemhat I, founder of the 12th dynasty. A cunning leader, he moved Egypt's capital north, to a new city called Ichtoi near today's Fayum. From there he could control both Upper and Lower Egypt. Amenemhat reformed Egypt's government, limiting the power of regional governors who had once torn the land apart. He fortified borders, secured trade, and built canals to improve farming. But his rise was not without danger. Ancient texts hint at betrayal, perhaps even an assassination attempt. One papyrus, the Prophecy of Neferti, paints him as a chosen ruler sent to save Egypt from chaos. Others suggest his reign ended in blood. Whether by prophecy or by blade, Amenemhat left his mark. Under him Egypt grew strong again. And under his son, it would march to war. Amenemhat's son, Senusret I, expanded Egypt's power into Nubia, securing the gold mines that would fuel Egypt's wealth. He built massive fortresses along the Nile, symbols of Egypt's might. Temples rose across the land, dedicated to Ammonius, the god who was becoming Egypt's supreme deity. The Middle Kingdom was not just an age of war, it was an age of gods. Later kings, like Senusret II, focused on Egypt's prosperity. He invested in irrigation, draining swamps in the Fayum to create new farmland. Egypt thrived as never before. With strong kings and clever reforms, the Middle Kingdom became the age of balance. Order restored. Borders secure. Gods honored. For a moment, Egypt seemed eternal. Then came one of Egypt's greatest warrior kings, Senusret III. He was a conqueror, remembered for his campaigns deep into Nubia. He built massive canals to control the Nile, and colossal fortresses to guard Egypt's southern border. His statues reveal a new style, wrinkled, weary faces. Not the eternal youth of earlier pharaohs, but the hardened realism of a king who carried the weight of war. Senusret III was worshipped as a god in Nubia, feared as a conqueror in Canaan, and remembered as one of the strongest rulers of the Middle Kingdom. Senusret III carved Egypt's power into the world. Under him, Egypt became not just a kingdom, but an empire in the making. The Middle Kingdom reached its peak under Amenemhat III. He expanded Egypt's irrigation even further, taming the Fayum with huge waterworks. He built two colossal statues, the famous Colossi of Memnon, that still stand today. Trade flourished. Expeditions brought back gold, turquoise, and exotic goods. Art and literature thrived. This was Egypt's golden age of peace and prosperity. But beneath the surface, cracks appeared. After Amenemhat III, the dynasty weakened. Kings grew short-lived, nobles grew stronger, and once again Egypt slipped toward decline. From the northeast came a new threat, foreign invaders known as the Hyksos. They brought weapons Egypt had never seen before: horses, chariots, and advanced bows. Against this new technology, Egypt's armies crumbled. The Hyksos seized the Nile Delta, ruling from their new capital at Avaris. For the first time, foreigners ruled Egyptian soil. Yet Egypt was not fully conquered. The south remained free, ruled from Thebes. For a century, two Egypts existed once more, one under Hyksos control, the other preparing for revenge. Egypt had risen, fallen, and risen again. But now foreigners ruled its heart. The Hyksos brought new weapons, new power, and humiliation. Yet in Thebes, pharaohs sharpened their blades. Soon Egypt would rise to fight back. And when it did, it would become an empire. For 100 years Egypt bowed to foreigners. The Hyksos ruled the north with strange weapons, their horses and chariots unmatched. But in the south, in Thebes, a dynasty of warriors rose. They would fight, bleed, and sacrifice everything to reclaim Egypt's glory. This is the dawn of the new kingdom, Egypt's age of empire. From Thebes came Ahmose I, brother of Kamose, who had already begun the fight against the Hyksos. When Kamose fell, Ahmose took the mantle. He trained his army in the very weapons the Hyksos had brought: chariots, bows, new bronze swords. For years he fought. Siege after siege, battle after battle. Finally, Ahmose stormed Avaris, the Hyksos capital. Their foreign kings were driven out. Egypt was free again. But Ahmose did not stop at victory. He pursued the Hyksos into Canaan, ensuring they would never return. Egypt was no longer just a kingdom, it was becoming an empire. With Ahmose's victory, the new kingdom began. Egypt had learned from its humiliation. Now it would conquer before it could be conquered. Ahmose's successors carried on his mission. Thutmose I expanded Egypt's borders farther than ever before, into Nubia in the south and deep into Syria in the north. Egypt became the superpower of the ancient world. His son, Thutmose II, ruled briefly, but his reign paved the way for one of the most extraordinary rulers in history, his queen. When Thutmose II died, his son, Thutmose III, was too young to rule. His stepmother, Hatshepsut, stepped in as regent. But she was no ordinary queen. She declared herself Pharaoh, king of Egypt. She wore the false beard, the crown, and the symbols of kingship. Some accepted her. Others despised her. But none could deny her power. Hatshepsut ruled not through war but through prosperity. She sent expeditions to the mysterious land of Punt, bringing back gold, incense, exotic animals. She built magnificent temples, including her masterpiece at Deir el-Bahari, rising from the cliffs like the stairway of the gods. Hatshepsut's reign was peaceful, prosperous, divine. But when she died, the young boy she once overshadowed would rise as Egypt's greatest conqueror. Thutmose III came to power with vengeance. He erased Hatshepsut's name from monuments, determined to claim glory for himself. Then he unleashed Egypt's armies. At the famous Battle of Megiddo, Thutmose III led a daring surprise attack, surrounding his enemies and crushing them. It was Egypt's first great battle of empire. From Nubia to the Euphrates, he conquered more than 17 campaigns. Egypt stretched farther than ever, an empire of wealth, tribute, and power. Thutmose III was not just a king. He was a general, a conqueror, a strategist. Under him, Egypt ruled the known world. Generations later came Amenhotep III, known as the Magnificent. His reign was a golden age of art and wealth. He built the massive colossi of Memnon, towering statues that still stand today. Diplomacy, not war, defined his rule. He exchanged gifts with kings from Babylon, Mitanni, and beyond. Egypt was at peace, overflowing with gold from Nubian mines and tribute from Asia. But within his palace, seeds of revolution stirred, seeds that would soon shatter Egypt's gods. Amenhotep's son, Akhenaten, broke with 2,000 years of tradition. He abandoned Egypt's pantheon of gods and declared a single deity, the Aten, the sun disk. He built a new capital, Akhenaten, modern Amarna, and devoted Egypt's wealth to his new religion. His queen, Nefertiti, stood by his side as co-ruler. But the people resisted. Priests of Ammonius, once powerful, seethed with rage. Soldiers grumbled as Egypt's borders weakened. While Akhenaten worshipped his god, Egypt's empire crumbled. Akhenaten dreamed of a new world. But his revolution left Egypt weaker than ever. And his line ended with a boy king, Tutankhamun. Tutankhamun, Akhenaten's son, restored the old gods. Temples reopened. Ammonius priests regained power. Egypt tried to heal. But the boy king ruled for only 10 years. At 19 he was dead. Was it disease? An accident? Or murder? The truth remains a mystery. For centuries, Tutankhamun was forgotten, a minor pharaoh. Until 1922, when Howard Carter uncovered his tomb, untouched, filled with over 5,000 treasures of gold. The boy who lived in shadows became immortal. The world would never forget his name again. Then came the mightiest of them all, Ramses II. He reigned for 66 years, longer than most people lived. Ramses was a builder, a warrior, a god-king. He fought the Hittites at the epic Battle of Kadesh, the largest chariot battle in history. Though neither side truly won, Ramses claimed victory and signed the world's first known peace treaty. He filled Egypt with monuments, temples at Luxor, Karnak, and Abu Simbel. His statues stretched for miles. His image was carved into eternity. For Ramses, glory was eternal. When he died at over 90 years old, Egypt mourned as though the sun itself had set. No pharaoh ever shone brighter. But even Ramses could not hold back time. His successors struggled. Invasions came from the Sea Peoples, Libyans and Assyrians. Egypt's empire fractured. Priests of Ammonius grew more powerful than kings. The new kingdom, the Golden Empire, slipped into decline. Egypt's glory had reached its peak. But now the empire of gods faced a new enemy, not just armies but time itself. Who would rise to save Egypt? And who would watch it fall into foreign hands? Egypt's golden age had ended. The glory of the new kingdom faded into dust. Temples still rose. The Nile still flowed. But the empire of the pharaohs was crumbling. And from across the seas and deserts new powers came. Invaders. Conquerors. Kings who were not Egyptian. Yet Egypt, though weakened, refused to die. After Ramses II, pharaohs struggled to hold Egypt together. The treasury drained, the army weakened, and priests of Ammonius in Thebes grew more powerful than kings. Foreigners took advantage. Libyan chiefs from the west settled in the delta, eventually seizing control. Egypt no longer ruled others, it was being ruled. Then came the Nubians from Kush, sweeping north from the south. They conquered Egypt and claimed the throne. Pharaohs like Pianki and Taharka saw themselves as true restorers of Egypt's glory. They rebuilt temples, honored the gods and ruled as Egyptians. But Egypt's neighbors were changing. A new power rose in Mesopotamia, the Assyrians. Brutal, merciless, armed with iron weapons. They invaded, crushing Egypt's armies. Pharaohs were dragged in chains. Temples were looted. Egypt was humbled. For the first time in 2,000 years, Egypt was no longer master of its destiny. The land of the pharaohs had become a prize for empires. In 525 BCE, the Persian Empire under Cambyses II invaded Egypt. With their vast armies, they defeated Pharaoh Psamtik III at the Battle of Pelusium. Legend says the Persians placed cats, sacred to Egyptians, on their shields and the Egyptian soldiers dared not strike. Egypt became a satrapy, a province of Persia. Its pharaohs were no longer divine kings, but governors under foreign rulers. Temples still operated, rituals continued, but Egypt's sovereignty was broken. For nearly 2 centuries Persians ruled, though brief rebellions flared. Pharaohs like Amartius tried to restore independence but victories never lasted. The Nile still flowed. The pyramids still stood. But the spirit of Egypt's kingship was fading into memory. Then in 332 BCE, the world shook with a new conqueror, Alexander the Great. He stormed through Persia, and when he entered Egypt the people welcomed him as a liberator. At Memphis, Alexander was crowned pharaoh. He journeyed to the oracle of Ammonius at Siwa Oasis, where priests declared him the son of the god. Egypt had a new ruler, a foreigner but one accepted as divine. Alexander founded a new city, Alexandria, at the mouth of the Nile. It would become a jewel of learning and trade, home to the great library of Alexandria and the towering Pharos lighthouse, one of the 7 wonders of the world. But Alexander's empire was vast, and when he died young, his generals carved it up. Egypt fell to Ptolemy I, one of his closest companions. And so began a new dynasty, the Ptolemies. For nearly 300 years the Ptolemies ruled Egypt. They were Greek by blood but Egyptian by crown. They built temples to Egyptian gods, yet also spread Greek culture. The Ptolemies married within their own family to keep power. Intrigue, assassinations and betrayal filled their courts. Some were strong rulers. Others weak, corrupted by luxury. But one name would outshine them all. One woman. The last pharaoh of Egypt. Born in 69 BCE, Cleopatra VII was brilliant, ambitious, and unlike any of her ancestors. She spoke 9 languages, studied philosophy and mastered politics. Egypt was weak. Rome was rising. To survive, Cleopatra knew she needed allies. She met Julius Caesar, the most powerful man in Rome. Their union was political and personal. Cleopatra bore him a son, Caesarion. For a time Egypt's throne was secure. But Caesar was assassinated. Rome descended into civil war. Cleopatra turned to another Roman, Mark Antony, Caesar's loyal general. Together they dreamed of a new empire, a Rome and Egypt united under their rule. But in Rome Antony's rival, Octavian, later Augustus, would not allow it. He declared war. In 31 BCE, at the Battle of Actium, Antony and Cleopatra's forces were defeated. Their dream collapsed. Back in Alexandria, Octavian marched on the city. Antony fell on his sword. Cleopatra, unwilling to be paraded through Rome as a captive, chose death. Some say she let an asp, a venomous snake, bite her. Others believe poison was her weapon. In 30 BCE, with Cleopatra's death, the line of pharaohs ended. Egypt became a province of Rome. For 3,000 years Egypt had been the land of gods and kings. But now it bowed to emperors of a foreign land. The age of the pharaohs was over. Yet Egypt never truly died. Its monuments, its gods, its stories lived on. The pyramids still towered. The Sphinx still watched. The Nile still flowed, carrying whispers of the past. The Greeks marveled. The Romans imitated. Centuries later, explorers, scholars, and travelers would uncover its secrets, from hieroglyphs to mummies. And in the modern age, Egypt's memory became eternal, an inspiration for art, science, and imagination across the world. From Narmer, the first king, to Cleopatra, the last queen, Egypt stood for 3,000 years. Pharaohs rose, empires clashed, gods were worshipped, and legends were born. No other civilization has endured so long, nor left such a mark on the human story. The pharaohs are gone. But Egypt? Egypt lives forever.